Kia ora, good morning and welcome to Herald Now. I'm Ryan Bridge. It's Wednesday, the 18th of June. Great to have your company this morning. Foreign Minister Winston Peters is live. First up this morning, Donald Trump is tweeting he won't kill Iran's supreme leader, quote, for now. Foodstuffs CEO Chris Quinn is on the show after this massive New World fire in Auckland yesterday. Is this now a demo job? And what happens to all the staff? What happens to all the food? Which region is the best in the country? Is it you, Canterbury? Is it you, Auckland? The regional economic scorecard is out and we've got the results for you this morning, plus the most expensive item you can buy at the supermarket. Die Henwood on the show, Mark Richardson here later on with personal finance. First, here's Neva.
Herald Now News, powered by Newstalk ZB.
Food inflation is up, rising 4.4% annually. Meat, poultry and fish had the biggest annual increases, while butter, milk and cheese drove grocery prices. Butter surged by more than 51% over the year. Independent economist Cameron Bagri told Ryan Bridge the numbers are creeping up, but the composition of the inflation matters more than the inflation itself.
So what we keep a pretty close eye on is what's called non-tradable inflation, which is domestic inflation. That's the piece that the Reserve Bank can control. It's elevated, but it's all been heading south, so we're taking a bit of comfort at that.
The coroner is calling for compulsory nationwide life jacket use following the death of a 10-year-old boy in the Manukau Harbour. Open Justice reports Ryder Ferrigill and his mother Gemma died in November 2022 after a boat carrying 5 people capsized near Clark's Beach. They both drowned after hours of clinging to the overturned hull and even after reaching the relative safety of a sandbar. Foodstuffs is confident staff from a fire-damaged Auckland supermarket will be well looked after. A large blaze at New World Victoria Park yesterday sent smoke billowing over the central city, taking about 10 hours to extinguish. Fire crews have been tending to hotspots overnight, with the building expected to be handed back today. Foodstuffs North Island CEO Chris Quinn says once they clarify the situation, they'll make a plan with each and every employee. South Island economies continue to stand tall. Canterbury, the West Coast, Otago and Marlborough have nabbed the top 4 spots on ASB's regional economic scoreboard, which rates regions based on year-on-year growth. Chief economist Nick Tuffley says the South Island's housing market is robust and employment has held up better than the North. He says areas like Otago have also had the benefit of strong tourism, while there's been a lot of good on-farm returns. More New Zealand businesses are directing their attention to growth. The 2 Degrees 2025 Shaping Business Study suggests 45% of business leaders are optimistic about the year ahead. It compares to 34% last year and 40% in 2021. But Chief Executive Mark Callender says there are still challenges.
We're still in a fairly recessionary-based economy. There's still inflation impacting businesses. There's lower household spending that's also impacting them. Against the backdrop of all of that, I think they can see line of sight to things improving.
A jam-packed agenda for the Prime Minister as his mission to boost our profile in China kicks off. Christopher Luxon's touchdown in Shanghai. Today will be all about championing New Zealand products to Chinese consumers at a number of events. Luxon's next stop is Beijing, where he will meet with President Xi Jinping.
Herald Now Sport, brought to you by Gold Sport.
Silver Fern's Vice-Captain Kate Heffernan is calling for flexibility in New Zealand's eligibility rules after revealing she's had conversations with Australian netball clubs. Arina Sabalenka has branded her comments as unprofessional after losing the French Open tennis final to Coco Gauff. She's apologised for attributing the result to mistakes rather than her opponent's performance. Queensland League coach Billy Slater has challenged former New South Wales prop Aaron Wood's claim he's a grub, ahead of tonight's second State of Origin match in Perth.
What if he is a grub? It has just gone 3 minutes after 7 now. The moral outrage over run it straight competitions is a tricky one, isn't it? A lot of pearl clutching over the last couple of weeks, a lot of shock, a lot of horror, a lot of I'm aghast. The reaction from some rugby stars, and this is quite telling, and sporting legends is more nuanced for obvious reasons. They also run full steam ahead at one another on a Saturday with great risk of personal injury, concussion or even death. They do this because A, they enjoy it, B, it's often all they've ever known, and C, presumably because it pays well. And that's the problem with the outrage over Run It Straight. They had a guy in the news yesterday who won $20,000 in trials held in Auckland. He's booked a spot in a final in Dubai where he could earn even more money. The money, he says, is putting clothes on his kids' backs. He said this yesterday in the news. We got to pay off some debts, stock up the fridges, get the cupboards full, food for our little ones, especially with the way the economy cost of living is these days. Fair enough. He saw it as a couple of hours' work with a huge payday. I happen to think if somebody wants to play a high-risk sport like rugby or UFC or anything on horses for that matter, then good on them. It's their life. I'm not here to judge it. The question for the rest of society, and this is what viewers and listeners most often will email this program about, problem with Run It Straight is ACC. To qualify for ACC, your injury has to be the result of an accident. An accident is basically something you didn't intend to happen, happening, a mistake. Run It Straight is bloody dangerous, but I think ultimately its injuries are accidents, like in rugby, like with horse riding. The system doesn't judge based on the threat of injury, just whether it's an accidental one or not.
Herald Now weather, brought to you by You Do It Kitchens.
Good morning. Another carbon copy day from yesterday. Fine, frosty and sometimes foggy. We do have a few frontal rain bands approaching. They'll hit the west tomorrow and then move north over southern and central New Zealand. This will see a slight increase in overnight temperatures tomorrow night, but for now, it's much the same for the lower south, with either a frosty or foggy morning. Mostly fine skies though. Cloud does roll in tonight with a few showers. Fifth morning in a row you've woken in the negatives. Christchurch, maybe some fog around too. It will be a mostly fine day here, but showers arrive out west and in the north this evening. Now, the usual suspects waking with fog and or frost. Once it clears, it's blue sky with cloud increasing tonight around the capital. There's one or two showers for Hawke's Bay early, taking a little longer to clear around Gisborne. Fog might return tonight for Rotorua, Tokoroa and for Taupō. And there could be pockets of fog around Auckland, but other than that, the upper north has another beautiful day. Fine, just a light south or southeasterly, with high cloud arriving tonight over Northland.
Right, we've had a couple of developments in the last hour or so out of the United States. This is in relation to Israel and Iran. This tweet from Donald Trump, well, it's not a tweet, it's Truth Social, saying that we know exactly where the so-called supreme leader is hiding. This is the Ayatollah in Iran. He is an easy target, but is safe there. We are not going to take him out, in brackets, kill, at least not for now. He says we don't want the missiles shot at civilians or American soldiers. Our patience is wearing thin. Thank you for your attention on this matter. That from Donald J. Trump. And Vance, meanwhile, has tweeted that Trump may decide to take further action. Quote, he may decide he needs to take further action on the uranium enrichment program in Iran. So if he was going to do anything, then that is what Vance is suggesting he might do at most. Of course, Trump has problems with the MAGA movement because they don't want the Americans involved in another bloody war in the Middle East. It's just gone 7 after 7 and you're watching Herald Now. Joining us this morning for the latest developments is our Foreign Minister, Winston Peters, in Wellington this morning. Minister, good morning.
Good morning.
Great to have you on the program. First of all, do you have any update on the New Zealanders that we asked to evacuate or to leave Israel and Tehran and Iran itself? It's obviously very difficult to get out of some of these places, but do we have any update on them at all?
Yeah, we do have updates, and we're constantly in touch with those that we have been engaged with for quite some time now in this crisis. There are 48 in Iran and 79 in Israel, but as I say, the airports are closed, air flights are shut down as an option, road safety is not what it should be, so we are advising people case by case, but because of the individual cases and their security, we don't divulge the details of that.
Minister, is there some sort of imminent threat over and above what we have seen in the last couple of days that you're aware of between Israel and Iran? We're getting these tweets from Donald Trump saying, evacuate Tehran immediately. Are you aware of anything that is outside the scope of what we have seen in the last 5 days?
Well, if you're asking me what are the permutations and what are the possibilities, or what is the ambit of crisis here, that is really a very big question, and it's very, very wide. And of course there are possibilities far worse than are currently before us going into the future, but they're not within our control. But we should be aware of them.
What are they?
Well, the potential for a strike against their nuclear capacity is not exhausted yet, and that's the intention, clearly, of both Israel and the United States. When you've got a country whose parliament is shouting for the last 40 years for the annihilation of both the United States and Israel, it tends to be a motivating factor in the judgment and considerations of those countries. I'm just referring to the fact that we're a long way from this crisis. But that is potentially, if you're asking me what might happen, that could happen.
And you can understand that, given, as you said, the last 40 years of history. Would New Zealand support American involvement on a strike on enrichment uranium facilities?
Look, Ryan already knew the answer to that. We do not believe in war when we haven't fully exhausted negotiations and diplomacy. And it's not within our precinct to have any effect on this whatsoever. We're a small country, way out here in the Southwest Pacific, who's doing a massive job in peacekeeping all around the world and moving people in crisis all around the world as we have. We've got a tremendous record for it. I wish New Zealanders would understand our limitations here, and dare I say it, the media understand our limitations as well.
Absolutely. I'm certainly not suggesting we do anything or say anything, but I'm interested to know your take on it. The International Atomic Agency says Iran is enriching uranium. They had a report out yesterday. They are enriching uranium above what is considered normal for commercial purposes, not quite at what would be weaponised purposes. But does New Zealand have a view on whether Iran is in fact enriching uranium for weapons-grade purposes?
Well, we can only go on international information, and the agency you just recited is very, very conservative and very, very careful in their calculations. But the enrichment is way beyond what they originally asked for and what they claimed they were seeking at the time they convinced Obama first and then President Biden to go down that pathway. Before Obama, this matter was under control. Now, I'm not criticizing past administrations, but what was the agreement back then is dramatically changed right now, and I think we should not hide from the fact that it represents imminent danger for us all, because all of a sudden now, with the reach of their rocket weaponry, this is a worldwide crisis.
So the risk that America might hit some sites in, well, Israel and America might hit some uranium enrichment facilities in Iran, given what you've just said about the Atomic Agency, the International Atomic Agency, and their information, would it be a bad outcome, and I know we're not suggesting that people should be doing this, but would it be a bad outcome if the result was the decimation of Iran's nuclear facilities, period?
Look, you're asking me to come on a program and make up foreign policy on the hoof. We don't do that. We keep our counsel. We make sure that when we talk on behalf of the New Zealand people with great reservation, because it's got consequences. So I'm not prepared to answer that question.
Appreciate you coming on the program this morning, Minister. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Foreign Minister Winston Peters. It is 12 minutes after 7. You're watching Herald Now. Christopher Luxon, the Prime Minister, has arrived in China for the first visit for him as Prime Minister. He spent 20 hours on an Air Force jet. There he is, hopping off. This is in Shanghai, 2 days in Shanghai, then 1 day in Beijing. Meetings with Chinese officials. Of course, he will meet with Xi Jinping. Not the first time he has met with Xi Jinping, but certainly the first time he has been hosted at the Great Hall of the People in Beijing, which will happen over the next coming days. So he's got there safely. Plane isn't broken down. That's always the main thing, isn't it? Right, it has just gone 7:13. You're on Herald Now. Canterbury has finally claimed the top spot in ASB's latest regional economic scoreboard released this morning. The scoreboard ranks the economic performance of our 16 regional council areas based on population, employment, retail trade, house prices, whole bunch of stuff. Take a look here at the full rankings and you can try and spot how well you have done. We're, of course, looking at Q1 for 2025. This is the national state of play for New Zealand's economic fortunes around the regions. Joining us this morning is Nick Tuffley, Chief Economist at ASB, to break it down. Nick, good morning.
Good morning.
Good to have you on the program. Just to start with, we have heard from one of the banks in the last 24 hours that they expect inflation, we had the food price numbers out yesterday, inflation will get outside the Reserve Bank's band of 1 to 3% in September. What's ASB's view?
Well, we do see a risk that it's getting up quite close to 3. Now, the main thing that's nudged it up in recent times, we did have some data out yesterday, but also it's just simple things like fuel prices are going up. Your last story about Iran in Israel, we've seen oil prices jump up. So there's that risk that we do see that bounce in inflation this year be just a little bit stronger than what people were thinking.
Right, let's get to the numbers for the regions. Canterbury reigns supreme, impressing you across the board, pretty much everything. Consumer spending, confidence, population growth, housing market.
Yes, look, it's been a very solid performer, and often we've seen it up near the top of the rankings for quite some time. So it's done very well, and it is that sort of evenness that we're getting in that region. And often the South Island has been doing quite well in recent quarters too. So it's not just a Cantabrian story. I am a Cantabrian, sorry. So results aren't biased, I have to say, but we are seeing that strength in the South Island.
But we're also seeing that rural-urban divide still, aren't we? I mean, the top 4 spots are again secured by the South Island, and we're seeing that, you know, high commodity prices flowing through, and tourism into some regions as well. Meanwhile, your cities are left high and dry.
Yes, there has been quite that split for some time, and look, when we look at the GDP figures as well, it's certainly showing that those drivers. So that GDP figures at the end of last year, it was those sort of agricultural, pastoral sectors that were doing it. First quarter of this year, GDP we're getting out tomorrow, heavy weighting it looks like towards those agricultural, tourism, sort of horticulture areas. So the big cities, particularly Auckland, weighed down by that big mortgage. Wellington weighed down by all the uncertainty around the government restructuring there. So really standing out for being at the bottom end of the rankings.
Yeah, the province is the place to be. When do you see this turning around? For people who are watching from the main centres this morning, when do you see what's happening in the regions flowing back through to the cities?
Well, there's 2 parts to it. We are just getting the taps turned on the money in some of those regional areas like dairy. The payouts are really strong. That money will start flowing through there and into the bigger urban areas. But the big one also is mortgage rates have fallen a lot, but not everybody has refixed onto a lower rate. So we're going to see a lot of that later on this year. So we should see those larger urban areas starting to pick up more noticeably as the year progresses. Coming
back to the CPI for a second, does the potential for us to get outside of band mean that we're probably going to see the Reserve Bank hold again in July?
Well, we do think the Reserve Bank will hold in July and cut a bit further after that. We had that view before this week's sort of news.
And this doesn't change anything, what we've seen this week?
Yes, I think, look, it just reinforces that we're likely to have a pause. The Reserve Bank's just nervous that inflation goes up, we all go, here we go again, 10% inflation, and we all change our behaviours. And there's just that little bit of nervousness, and they're likely to just want to wait and see some other data in August.
I know, but no one wants them to wait and see. Well, no one in Auckland wants them to wait and see more data, do they? No one with a mortgage in Auckland wants them to wait. Appreciate you coming on the show this morning, Nick.
Thank you.
Good to see you. That is ASB's Nick Tuffley, Chief Economist at ASB, with the regional scorecard this morning. 7:17 now. If you've got anything to say about our topics today, and particularly I want to ask you about food prices. This is an email from one of our viewers this morning. Thank you for watching. Ryan at nzherald.co.nz is how you get in touch. Hi Ryan, with a block of butter now costing $11, completely unaffordable for the average customer, why can't we import butter from cheaper places, Australia, Malaysia, India, for example? There has to be a solution to this horrible situation that we have in New Zealand, says Ruth, I believe it is. Yeah, it's a good point. It's a game of two halves. We pay more for the butter, but our farmers also get paid more in their receipts from international markets, and we export 90+% of what we produce. So we have to pay the international price. The Australians don't export, first of all, in terms of quantity, anywhere near that. And when they send their butter here, often it's what they call a loss leader. They're not actually making any money on it. You know, your Costco's might be selling it at half what the retail price should be because they want to get you in the store, and that's a good way to do it. So I don't know. First of all, what is the most expensive thing that you buy at the supermarket that you can't avoid purchasing? Ryan at nzherald.co.nz, and then we can debate butter as well, perhaps. We'd love to get your feedback this morning. We'll read it out on air. Later, ACT leader David Seymour, Greens co-leader Chloe Swarbrick are together and live on the show. Coming up next, who's on top when it comes to, well, no, we've already done that one. No one's on top when it comes to the fire that ripped through a central Auckland supermarket yesterday. We're going to speak to Chris Quinn from Foodstuffs next.
Maximising productivity, what have you got?
Well, if we switch to 2 degrees, with Flex for Business, we can instantly manage data usage, employee mobile plans, and cost centre reporting, saving us time and money. Cool. I'll get onto that then. Mm-hmm.
In 1985, my grandfather set out to make the world a better tea. That's why we grow our own, unlike other tea companies. Then pick the best leaves by hand, not machine, and pack it right here in Sri Lanka. But it's not just the taste that makes our tea better. 15% of our profit goes to humanity and to the elephants. As my grandfather said,
do try it.
You Do It delivers high-quality New Zealand-made flat-pack DIY kitchen cabinetry. With flexible widths at your fingertips, it makes designing easy. All at an affordable price because you order online and cut out the middleman. You can even upgrade your dream kitchen with You Do It stylish and clever options, like choosing wall cabinets with overhanging doors, or select from a range of pull-out storage solutions. Add premium soft-close drawers and ask to stretch the height, width or depth of your cabinets. Upgrade your kitchen today and head to youdoit.co.nz.
You're watching Herald Now, 21 after 7. The fire that ripped through a central Auckland supermarket yesterday has now been put out. Investigations will soon begin to establish why the New World Victoria Park caught on fire in the first place. Rachel Mayer is NZ Herald's reporter who's down at the scene there in front of the fire. Rachel, good morning. I drove past this morning, still smelt quite a lot. What's it like down there now?
Yeah, Ryan, you're completely correct. The smell is still really bad here. It's a beautiful, clear morning, just like it was yesterday, 11 a.m. when the fire broke out. It took firefighters 10 hours to extinguish the blaze. They did so at around 9 p.m. last night. They did expect to be battling it long into the night, so quite a success there. A scene guard remained on the scene, along with about 5 crews, compared to the 16 that were here at the peak of the blaze, just to dampen down any hotspots, keep an eye that it didn't reignite.
Did they say, Fire and Emergency, why it took so long to put out?
No, well, usually fires like this take quite a bit longer. They're calling it quite a success to get it under control in just 10 hours. There was a construction going on inside, obviously quite a few flammable materials inside the supermarket. So 10 hours, although seems like quite a long time, for the size of the fire, the scale of the building, 10 hours is not that long.
Rachel, thank you for that update. Appreciate your time this morning. Rachel Mayer, who's our reporter from the Herald down outside New World Victoria Park in Auckland. It is 23 after 7 now. We're going to Chris Quinn, the Chief Executive at Foodstuffs North Island. Chris, good morning. Looks like we're Chris, good morning. Good to have you on the program. Obviously a very trying day for you and your staff yesterday, and we're sending them all our best wishes. What happens now with the building? Have you been given any update in terms of, is this a demo job? Can you even rebuild this building? What's the situation there, do you know?
Building. It was about 200 people involved in that. And then the fire and emergency service guys, as Rachel, your reporter, just said, did a fantastic job. So we couldn't be, sort of feeling more humbled by everybody's support for that. We believe we'll get the building back sometime today, and that'll be our opportunity to start assessing just how extensive this damage is. At this point, we just have no idea. But as you could just see from the video in the daylight, it's pretty extensive. It's been a major fire and it went for hours. So what we've now got to do is just try and work out how structural and how widespread the damage is, what the water and the smoke have done to the building and to all of the equipment and stock inside it. And we have half a dozen plans prepared. We just need to get information to find out which one is the best to pursue. We have thousands of customers come through this store a day. We want to be able to serve those customers as soon as we can, but safely and well.
Do you know whether everyone got their cars out yet? That was a worry yesterday.
Yeah, there was a bunch of cars in the car park. Team on site did an amazing job of grabbing details of everybody that had one, making sure we understood whose cars were there. I believe most, if not all, of the cars have now been resolved. And we made sure that customers who couldn't get to their cars got home. We got them cabs and just did the right things in terms of supporting people who had this horrible surprise situation unfold.
Yeah. So will all the staff keep getting paid? That's one of the main questions we're being emailed. Will the staff keep getting paid no matter whether there's work to go to or not?
100% they will. So we've been very clear with the team that we will make sure that they are looked after, that the bills can be paid and that they'll be okay. We need a little bit of time to work out what the plan is going to be for this building. Some of the staff will already be working at other stores today, fulfilling online orders and serving catering needs and the various things that were booked for the next few days for this store. I sat with some of the team last night till about 9 o'clock, just listening through everything they were doing. Some amazing leaders who just jump in and do the right thing straight away. So the staff will be looked after.
Early indications what caused it?
No, we don't. We know it likely started in an area of the building that was being refurbished and rebuilt at this time, but we have no idea what started it. And it's really important that we stand back and let the experts determine that accurately and make sure that that's going well. So
was there anyone in the area? You said it was in a place that was being constructed or having construction done on it. Was there anyone in the area when the fire was started?
Look, I don't have accurate information on that, so we'll wait for the full report and the investigation to understand.
All right. Appreciate your time this morning, Chris. That is Chris Quinn, Chief Executive at Foodstuffs North Island, obviously looking after the New World Victoria Park. You would have seen it if you've been to Auckland. It's by Victoria Park, by the motorway, one of the biggest, certainly most frequented supermarkets in the central city. All right, you're watching Herald Now. Coming up, Chloe Swarbrick, David Seymour, our regular political panel. They are together from Parliament for us this morning. We'll get to your feedback as well. Mark Richardson is in just before 8 o'clock. That's to talk personal finance. Quick break, back soon.
Of course we can set up the new smart TV for you. We could also put it on the wall for you too.
Want to keep your family safe online? We've got tips for that.
Yeah, I can show you how to use the AI on your laptop.
Teaching the kids to do laundry? These washing machines auto-dispense the perfect amount of detergent, making it super easy to learn.
Wait, what's a Ninja Creamy?
Got tech questions? We've got answers. With 66 stores nationwide, your tech experts ready to help.
Sing your heart out to Coast's feel-good 80s hits. Kenny Loggins, Whitney, John Farnham, Eurythmics, Bonnie Tyler, Eric Carmen, The most 80s are on Coast. Sing your heart out. Coast.
After 20 seasons on the footy field, it's fair to say I know a thing or two about resilience, just like Kaiwaka wet weather gear. Digging deep when the going gets tough. Kaiwaka, designed to perform, made to outlast.
We have completed 4 builds with GJ. Every time we want to think of building, we always go back to GJ.
It's a really good experience throughout the whole process.
They deliver what they promise on, and it feels like working with a family member. It's very easy and trustworthy to work with GJ.
Welcome back to Herald Now, just gone 29 minutes after 7. By the way, Fire and Emergency Phil Larkham from Fire and Emergency is going to hold a stand-up shortly outside the New World at Victoria Park. I'm interested to know, so it happened in the area where construction was taking place. Chris Quinn wouldn't tell us whether there was anyone actually in that area when the fire started, so whether it was some sort of electrical issue or whether it was a human error issue, we don't know. But I'm interested to know why, when there's a mezzanine involved, it seems to take so long to put a fire out. They're doing an update shortly, so we'll bring that to you live. Also this morning, Garth Bray will have the latest from business, and overnight we had another global dairy trade auction, down 1% overall. So if you are interested in the price of butter, then that may be a good thing for you. Third consecutive auction, by the way, that it went backwards. 1.6 last time, 0.9 the time before that, down 1 this auction. Remember, they happen fortnightly. And whole milk powder is the one we really care about because that makes up the majority of what we sell to the world. That was down 2.1%. Butter actually was up 1.4%, cheddar up 5.1%, and skim milk powder down 2.1% as well. Not quite as bad as the 5% that some were predicting yesterday, but still it's a backward step for this auction. It has just gone 7:30. Here's Neva.
Herald Now News, powered by News Talk ZB.
Food inflation is up, rising 4.4% annually. Meat, poultry and fish had the biggest annual increases, while butter, milk and cheese drove grocery prices. Butter surged by more than 51% over the year. Independent economist Cameron Bagri told Ryan Bridge the numbers are creeping up, but the composition of the inflation matters more than the inflation itself.
So what we keep a pretty close eye on is what's called non-tradable inflation, which is domestic inflation. That's the piece that the Reserve Bank can control. It's elevated, but it's all been heading south, so we're taking a bit of comfort at that.
The coroner is calling for compulsory nationwide life jacket use following the death of a 10-year-old boy in the Manukau Harbour. Open Justice reports Ryder Ferrigill and his mother Gemma died in...
All right, we're just hearing that press conference outside the New World Victoria Park is about to start. Our reporter is there with a camera. So as soon as we hear from Fire and Emergency, this is the incident controller, start to speak, we will cross there for you live now.
Yep, at this stage we've got our fire engineers, fire investigators and a few crews on scene just to make sure we are monitoring hotspots and understanding any other challenges that we may come across.
Will the scene be handed back over to Foodstuffs this morning?
It won't be handed over this morning, no.
Can you tell us a bit more about the damage inside the store?
The damage inside the store is very extensive. As you can see from what's outside here, the inside's not looking any better.
Do we know what caused the fire?
No, we don't know what caused the fire as of this stage.
There were conversations online saying that the fire started in the storeroom. Can you confirm those at this stage?
We have an area of origin in the building that we are focusing on, which is towards the rear of the building.
And was that where construction was taking place?
We believe so.
Do you believe at this stage it could be construction related?
Our investigators are following all sorts of avenues, and that is one of them.
Yesterday, crews said that they were treating any site of asbestos as asbestos. Have you detected any sort of hazardous substances around?
Not at this stage, no.
The smoke yesterday was called quite acidic smelling. Is there any long-term concerns about any health effects from that smoke?
No, there won't be any long-term concerns from that. We did have Auckland Council here doing some air monitoring in the local vicinity, and they came up with no concerns around the local neighbourhood yesterday.
When you're looking at this sort of damage inside, you say it's significant. Is the building a write-off, essentially?
That'll be for the insurance assessors and the builders to understand how far the building will be written off.
It took 10 hours yesterday to battle that blaze. Is that considered a long or short amount of time for a fire of this scale?
It is a large-scale building that had its challenges, obviously, with taking up 3/4 of the block here. So, no, that was a normal sort of time for a fire of that size in the location.
And you brought in another aerial truck from Hamilton yesterday. Has that gone back down to Hamilton?
Yes, that returned down to Hamilton yesterday afternoon.
The firefighters doing having real critical this morning on the availability of those appliances. Do you have any comment on that?
No further comment than what was said on the radio this morning and on the news.
There was another fire to break out. How important is the
We'd have to rationalise our resources that we have on the scene here, and we always have a contingency plan to be able to release trucks if required.
Is there any work underway to try and improve the availability of capability of those trucks?
Yeah, there is work underway in that space with our national fleet coordinators.
Overall, do you have any comment on the response of crews and the appliances, how it all worked out?
Yeah, we're very grateful for the response of our people yesterday from all across Auckland who attended, and they worked really hard in quite trying conditions here at the start, and we always appreciate the work that they do.
Have you heard from the owner of the store about how they're feeling this morning?
I haven't spoken to the owner this morning, but we will be catching up with them shortly. I imagine they are devastated at what's occurred, not only for themselves and their staff, but the local community.
You're listening to Phil Larkham. This is the Fire and Emergency Incident Controller giving an update. Not much of an update really, because what can you say from outside the New World Fire, Victoria Park in Auckland. That's Fire Incident Controller in Auckland, Phil Larkham. What can you say? Actually, most of the feedback that I've had this morning on radio and also that we're getting into the email inbox is what's happening with the food. I forgot to ask Chris Quinn, who's Chief Executive, what's happening with all the food. But I would imagine after all the smoke damage, you would throw it out. I mean, the thing was on fire for 10 hours. What are you going to? We're not going to save apples here, you know. I would assume it's all been given the biff. Ryan at nzherald.co.nz is the email address. Just gone 25 minutes away from 8 o'clock. Here's weather.
Good morning. Another carbon copy day from yesterday. Fine, frosty and sometimes foggy. We do have a few frontal rain bands approaching. They'll hit the west tomorrow and then move north over southern and central New Zealand. This will see a slight increase in overnight temperatures tomorrow night, but for now, it's much the same for the lower south, with either a frosty or foggy morning. Mostly fine skies though. Cloud does roll in tonight with a few showers. Fifth morning in a row you've woken in the negatives. Christchurch, maybe some fog around too. It will be a mostly fine day here, but showers arrive out west and in the north this evening. Now, the usual suspects waking with fog and or frost. Once it clears, it's blue sky with cloud increasing tonight around the capital. There's one or two showers for Hawke's Bay early, taking a little longer to clear around Gisborne. Fog might return tonight for Rotorua, Tokoroa and for Taupo. And there could be pockets of fog around Auckland, but other than that, the upper north has another beautiful day. Fine, just a light south or southeasterly, with high cloud arriving tonight over Northland.
Thank you very much for that update. Now, before he left the G7 in Canada, Trump signed part of a deal on tariffs with, and I say part deal because they still haven't done the aluminium and most of the meaty stuff hasn't been done, but they signed a narrow deal. This is the Brits and the Americans with Starmer, and the photo op didn't go well. Have a look.
We all know the great Prime Minister of the UK, and we just signed a document. This is, sorry about that. A very important document. A little windy out here. Give me that one. We just signed it, and it's done. And so we have our trade agreement with the European Union, and it's a fair deal for both. Going to produce a lot of jobs, a lot of income, and we have many other ones coming.
Just a trick for young players, never bend over like that when you're at a press conference. It's never going to look good, especially when you're giving away more than what he's giving you. You know, just the optics. Just don't do that. Interestingly, I've just had an email from Paddy, who is in London. Paddy, welcome to the show. He says, I'm a Kiwi living in London. Just wanted to say I've been loving watching the show live on my weeknights on YouTube. Makes me feel connected to home. I'll be back to New Zealand eventually, but so happy to have your show in the meantime. Keep up the good work. Paddy, thank you for that. Lovely to have you watching from the UK this morning. Give your Prime Minister some tips on how to handle a press conference, would you? 23 minutes away from 8 o'clock. And it's time to talk business, thanks to our partners, 2 Degrees. Has our economy hit a brick wall, or is it about to bounce out of the rough? Business Desk is across this, as always. Garth Bray is with me this morning. Garth, good morning.
Good morning, Ryan.
So we've had some food price and inflation data come out, and then we've had some banks come out, and we had ASB on earlier, to say this could push inflation again outside the Reserve Bank's band.
Yeah, and that brick wall we're talking about could be a brick wall of frozen butter. If you look at the food prices that came out yesterday, I think we're talking like 51.2% increase in the price of butter over 12 months, 4.4% in, uplift in inflation. All of that is probably, if you're sitting there trying to think as a Reserve Bank board, what are we going to do? Crikey, it's looking a bit hot at the end of the year, and is the kind of stimulus that an inflation, that a rate cut in July would deliver, is that going to come later and just make the problem worse? Are we giving the medicine to the patient at the point where they're starting to recover, and this could actually help cook the recovery? This is the kind of calculus that seems to be suggesting to a lot of these bank economists that maybe they're not going to cut.
So they'll just hold. I mean, that's what Nick Tuffley said this morning. They'll basically just hold.
Yeah.
Speaking of butter, another couple of bidders out of the box for Fonterra's mainland group.
Yeah, this is the big deal. It's still sort of bubbling away. Probably got another 4 or 5 months before we actually hear how it lands. But Bega cheese, which Fonterra has the rights to distribute in Australia, has been banging on the door for ages saying we want to be let in, we want to be able to bid on this thing. They're actually in a wee bit of a court dispute over the right to continue distributing those products for Bega if they on-sell the whole thing. I know it's confusing, isn't it? And then you've got Bega saying, well, we'll go to the Commerce Commission equivalent, the ACCC, and we'll say we want a bit of a declaration about how this would affect competition. So it shows they're quite serious, actually, about bidding for the assets. However, they're kind of more keen on bidding for what's in Australia. They're saying not so sure about some of the Asian assets. And then the Australian newspaper, unnamed sources, was claiming that there's a Japanese bidder, Meiji Holdings, that's on the Nikkei, that's looking at taking a bite at this too.
But they haven't yet decided, Fonterra, whether they're going to do an IPO or whether it's going to be a trade sale, have they?
Haven't said.
But we think that they'll do a trade sale.
Well, the folks at Business Desk seem to think that it's looking more like a trade sale. That's where a lot of the talk is. There's certainly a lot of interest in a trade sale.
Is this Riley Kennedy? No, because no one knows more about it than.
Well, he was having a word with Peter McBride, the Fonterra chair, at Field Days and since, and I think they're pretty confident about where it's all going. So
he knows
more on the site.
He knows his stuff. Yeah. Hey, the national ticketing system. This is for buses and public transport. Yeah. So NZTA has a contract to run this. What's going on here?
Right. So this popped up in Scrutiny Week this week. Popped up yesterday. Chris Bishop is worried and unhappy, probably not
like just generally in life, or about this specifically?
With this specifically, which is probably not good news if you're at NZTA and you've signed a contract of about $470 million to US defence contractor to build a system that supposedly means you can use kind of like a hop card or a snapper card or whatever anywhere in the country, any bit of public transport you'll be able to use debit cards on. Sounds great.
$500 million?
Well, that's the initial contract. I think the budget out for sort of 10, 15 years is more like $1.5 billion. This is crazy stuff, right? But the benefits are yet to come. It was meant to roll out in Canterbury and Christchurch last year. It hasn't come yet. There's a governance group that's working on it, and Chris Bishop was saying, well, he's expecting a report from them by the end of July, and he wants a lot of action on that.
Well, you'd hope so for $472 million, wouldn't you? That's just another reason not to get the bus, in my mind.
Or to grab it because it costs that much. You might as well, Ryan.
True. Do you know actually who gets the bus is our next guest, or one of our next guests, Mark Richardson, who's sitting over there.
Good man.
He gets the bus. He's the last person I would have imagined would get on a bus, but he told me last time we were chatting that he gets the bus into work every day.
Whereas you could probably picture me on a push bike easily.
Well, you do. I know that you bike because you come in sweating. I can smell you before I see you.
But saving so much money along the way.
Garth, good to see you. That's Garth Brave from Business Desk, and we talk business every day thanks to our partners 2 Degrees. Coming up next, comedian Die Henwood from the Bowels, literally, of Eden Park, and it's for a Day in the Loo promotion, by the way. Next, though, Chloe Swarbrick and David Seymour do battle live from Parliament.
Are you considering a DIY kitchen but just not sure if you can do it? Well, it's not as hard as you think. With You Do It DIY Kitchens, you're in safe hands. And the customer support team really know their stuff. After all, they design and manufacture everything here in New Zealand. You do it and you save money. So choose You Do It, the affordable DIY Kiwi kitchen with a great reputation. Visit newsroom.co.nz.
I'm Hayden Scott and I'm a knife maker. I make knives from my workshop at home in West Auckland. Yeah, my previous life I was a chef, did that for 25 years. But I had this knife making thing that I was doing and had been doing for some time. And so that transition from finishing that 25-year career and taking the plunge into full-time knife maker, I had been building up to that, but I still had to take a leap.
Ah, here she is. How's the business going?
Good, actually. We just switched to 2 Degrees. Well, we tested the networks and couldn't see any difference, but 2 Degrees has the most satisfied customers. With Flex, we get instant control of phone plans, data usage, and cost centre reporting. And they're the fastest growing business network.
Can I have what she's having?
You're watching Herald Now. Great to have your company. The email address this morning, ryan@nzherald.co.nz. Getting lots of your feedback this morning about the most expensive item you purchase at the supermarket, and we'll get to some of that in just a second. Right now, though, it turns out that story about the government halving sick days from 10 down to 5, those evil, meanie people, was fake news. Only problem with it, of course, is that it was spread by the Prime Minister himself in an interview on Monday. So what's going on here? David Seymour, the leader of the ACT Party, is with us from Parliament, and Chloe Swarbrick, co-leader of the Greens. Good morning, guys.
Good morning.
Hey, I thought we'd start with butter, because we've had lots of emails just in the last couple of minutes since we started talking about it. And I imagine, correct me if I'm wrong, but you'll have different views, but butter, Chloe, very expensive for people. One of the drivers of food price inflation that we saw yesterday. But isn't it also good because we're paying an export price and that's what our farmers are getting, that comes back to the country? Can you see both sides of it?
I mean, as with all things, of course you can see both sides of it, but at the end of the day, I think what people are concerned about is their ability to put food on the table. And that's why we need to be squarely focused on improving the cost of living for New Zealanders, whilst also rapidly reducing our climate changing emissions, which, you know, if we leave climate change unabated, farmers are those hit first and worst by climate change charged weather events. So that's why the Greens are really proud to have put our green budget on the table just last month to show people precisely how that is possible if we use our collective resources to realise our collective ambitions.
David, is the price of butter a good thing or a bad thing?
Well, it's both. It's obviously very good for New Zealand farmers to see that milk price up around $10. However, New Zealand consumers are paying that global price that the farmers are getting. Ultimately, it's not just butter, it's all the things people are trying to afford. How easily we can afford it depends on the strength of the New Zealand dollar, on our economy, and that's why it's so important that we have a government that's really focused on managing its own finances and affairs well, so that there's more for everybody else to use to provide for their own needs, and for everything from butter to clothing to getting around the town with petrol.
Sick leave, this was another issue this week that's popped up. Government not going to be cutting from 10 days down to 5 the sick leave. David, why not? Why do we need 10 days sick leave?
Well, it's an argument you can make that it should be 5. Other people would argue it should be 15. But the change that the government's making with Brooke van Velden as our Workplace Relations and Safety Minister is to ensure that it's pro-rated. And what that means at the moment, you could be someone that works part-time, say 1 day a week, so you only work 50 days a year, but you get 10 days off. That's 20% of your time as sick leave. The changes that Brooke will make it fairer, so that you get the same amount of days, about 10 days out of 250 or 4% of your time you can take off as sick, regardless of whether you work full-time or part-time.
Most people, Chloe, would think that's reasonable. Do you reckon?
I mean, if we want to be reasonable and evidence-based, then our starting point, I don't think, should be how do we cut this thing down. It should be looking at how we currently sit within kind of the middle of the stock when it comes to international metrics, and we would usually compare ourselves. But more so than that, the kind of starting question should be, how do we keep New Zealanders safe? How do we keep New Zealanders healthy and well? Because if we're talking about the economy in the broadest possible sense, then all that really is all of us, the things that we create, the rules that we put in place in order to try and govern those kinds of relationships. And I think that the starting point should be making sure that New Zealanders are fit, healthy and safe to be able to go to work, which in turn has flow-on effects for our productivity and for the so-called growth that this government says it's fixated upon. So the starting point should not be cutting those sick days. I heard from a number of constituents, particularly parents, who are really alarmed by the news about the potential cuts, whether it's half or just less than that. But again, the starting point should not be cuts. The starting point should be fairness.
There are no cuts being made. What is happening is that you get the same amount of sick leave, but it's proportional to the amount of time that you actually work.
Yeah, which I think makes sense. I think most people get that.
One day a week, you need 1 day off. If you're sick for a week and you need to work 5 days, you need 5 days off. That's fair.
Yeah, fair enough. Hey, Chloe, just talking about health, because the ministry has put, have you seen the Herald this morning? Probably not if you're in Wellington, but they've put these ads everywhere. Advertising the fact that all of the targets, or most of the targets that the government set for the ministry, are actually starting to improve. Shorter waits for elective treatment, shorter stays in emergency departments, faster cancer treatments, childhood immunisations, shorter waits for first specialist assessments. Why is this government making progress in places that the last one couldn't?
Well, first things first, I'd say I haven't seen that, so we'd need to look into the detail of it. And as I think both you and I could agree on, the fact that data and the presentation of stats can often end up being presented in a way that is beneficial.
You just said you haven't seen them, but you're going to tell them anyway.
Well, no, I was saying that I haven't seen them, but I'd like to see them, and then I'd like to dig into the detail that sits behind them. But more than that, Ryan, look, you only need to have had an experience with our emergency departments in winter to see that things are falling apart. And here, I don't want to lay the responsibility only at the feet of this current government. It is decades of systemic underfunding from successive governments that has resulted in the healthcare crisis that we are currently experiencing at the front line. And we can fix that, but we have to fix that with sensible, common sense investment, which means a fairer tax system and us having more rational conversations about what we take on debt for, like investing in our infrastructure, as opposed to the tax cuts that this government's decided to borrow for.
David, I can see the restraint in your eyes. You guys, I have to say, on the whole, have both been really well behaved this morning. I'm kind of surprised at how this has gone.
Well,
it's our first run, mate.
I mean, Chloe's digging herself her own hole, so I don't need to get involved. But can we just put a bit of perspective around
there it is.
I mean, 2017, Labor and the Greens get into government. The health budget's $18 billion. 6 years later, they're out of government. The health budget is $30 billion. They
global pandemic along the way.
That came and went within that period. It was actually higher for a little bit, then it got to 30 by the end of the 6 years. Now, in that period, they put up the spending by 66%, way more than population, way more than inflation, and managed to get worse results through mismanagement. What we're now doing is we are increasing the budget. We've increased it by about another $2 billion since we've been in power. But we're also saying, how do we get value out of that massive increase in spending? And the objection I have to the Greens and their budget is that, they say that throwing money at every problem is the solution. Actually, we've tried that. They've actually proved it didn't work, and now they're promising to do it more.
I want to be crystal clear that throwing money at the problem alone, Ryan, is not actually the solution here.
It's your whole budget.
No, growing our real-world economic capacity and actually planning our economy is the solution here, and the Greens have shown from an evidence-based way that we can do that.
Right, we have to let you go. That's what happened.
Okay. I look forward to doing this all again next week, guys.
I tried, mate.
right.
And don't hold this. None of this pussyfooting around next week, okay? Just go for it from straight out the starting blocks. Appreciate your time this morning.
We have your permission.
You do. Yeah, Unleashed. Next week it's Unleashed version. 8 minutes away from 8 o'clock. You're watching Herald Now. That's David Seymour, the ACT leader and acting Prime Minister, along with the Green Party co-leader Chloe Swarbrick. They had their fiscal plan out yesterday, if you want to take a look. Now, if you've got something to say about what we're talking about this morning, get in touch. Ryan at nzherald.co.nz. We'll read your feedback out on air. The question we're asking this morning, what is the most expensive thing you buy at the supermarket? Something you have to purchase at the supermarket. Flick us an email, ryan at nzherald.co.nz. I'm going to be completely honest with you, and my husband always says that I shouldn't say this, but I do not do the shopping. So I have literally no idea. You know, when we asked the Prime Minister, what does a thing of milk cost? I have to Google that before I ask, because I have absolutely no idea. Not because I'm not sensitive to the price of things, but because I don't ever do the shopping. And I can say that because I don't have a wife. 7 to 8 now. Bowel cancer is the second biggest cancer killer in New Zealand, with around 3,000 people diagnosed every year and over 1,200 deaths. Comedian Die Henwood was diagnosed with stage 4 bowel cancer in 2020. Right now, he's down at Eden Park for the annual Day in the Loo event, and he joins us now. Hey, Die, how are you?
Morena, Ryan. I'm literally in the bowels of Eden Park here. Behind me, you've got the Hauraki Breakfast Show, who are kicking off the Day in Loo. It's raising awareness for bowel cancer New Zealand. And I mean, it was quite a poignant chat you're having with David and Chloe there, because I've recently had 2 hospitalisations, or 3 over the last 8 weeks, and I've seen the sort of, I suppose, the stress that the healthcare system is under. That's why early detection is so important. So if anyone out there is sort of having symptoms of bowel cancer, whether it be bleeding on toilet paper, whether it be tiredness, sort of fatigue, those sort of things, talk to your doctor, get early awareness. I mean, I'm 5 years into this, and the amount of medical treatments I've been through has been so full on. So I'm such an advocate for early awareness.
Absolutely. How did you realise that you had it? Or did it get so bad that, you know, someone did a test for you? Or did you spot a symptom? How did it work?
So I'm actually one of those people who, I go to the doctor. I advocate for myself. I was misdiagnosed to a point through no malice, but I didn't fit on the bell curve of what a person with bowel cancer would look like. I was too young. So they thought it might be a fissure or something. I even saw a bowel specialist. And this was 2017. And then I was diagnosed with stage 4 bowel cancer in 2020, just after the pandemic started, when I got a colonoscopy. So I'm I'm sure there are plenty of other people in my position, but I was an advocate for myself. So it can even happen when you're in that situation. So if you do notice anything, you are your own advocate. You have to push for it. And it doesn't mean getting a full colonoscopy. There are other bowel screening options at the moment. So really listen to your body.
Yeah, good advice, Di. Thank you. Quickly, how much are you hoping to raise, and what do people do if they want to donate?
Well, we're obviously hoping to raise as much as possible. And I should know more details about how to donate. I don't strictly work for Hauraki, but tune into Radio Hauraki, and they'll have the answer. And hey, here's a little wildcard thing, what Chloe and David were talking about. Why don't we take politics out of the health system, decide what outcomes we want for all New Zealanders, then we just fund it, and no political party can change it. You've got to make a 30-year plan. You've got to get involved. You've got to take politics out of it. Anyway, have a lovely day and a good coffee.
Thank you, Di. Don't worry, I have the website for people to donate. You don't have to worry about that.
Oh, wonderful.
Have a great day. Enjoy yourself down there at Eden Park.
You too.
Literally in the toilet today. Die Henwood at Eden Park for us. That website address, so you can go and donate, head along, is dayintheloo.co.nz. That's dayintheloo.co.nz. It's 3 minutes away from 8 o'clock. Comedian Die Henwood with us. Time to talk personal finance now, thanks to our partners at Forsyth Bar. With the recent downgrading of CVs in Auckland, it's now a good time to look at investments elsewhere, beyond the property sector. Investment advisor, Forsyth Bar's Mark Richardson is back in the studio. Hey, Mark.
Go, mate. How you doing?
Oh, you know, not too bad. CVs don't mean anything.
No, I just thought because that's newsworthy. You're right. I mean, your house is only worth what someone's prepared to pay for, and I think any time is a good time to look beyond property. I feel I'm taking a little bit of a risk today because New Zealanders know property so well, and I would never really argue against sort of residential property investment for the purpose of creating or building wealth, because if you're younger, if you're getting started, you are forced to leverage and you harness the power of leverage. Once you get to the point where you're not really needing to leverage, I would start to argue quite heavily against property, but also I think there's a case for a little bit more diversification from property alone for New Zealanders, and I don't think New Zealanders realise how the share market, even our own share market, actually performs in comparison to property. It's just as successful.
Yeah, if not more, depending on which time period you look at.
I guess if you go over 10 years, and that's the thing, with property we're generally forced to be in it for a long period of time.
Yeah.
And New Zealanders don't actually, our properties aren't valued on a daily basis like the share market is. Yeah. And if they were, we wouldn't sleep at night because it goes up and down like the share market.
Well, a bit like the CVs this week. It took, one day and people were ringing council.
Yeah, so I mean, when you look at the property market, I guess over the last 10 years, 6 to maybe 8%, a little bit of yield on top of that. New Zealand share market 9.1 over 10 years, and then the S&P 500 13.5 over 10 years. So the markets are performing the same. It's just you can leverage in property. We could talk leverage equities, but that's a discussion for a whole another day.
Yeah. Do you know the thing about property is when you're young, you can fix them up. And as you
make improvements.
You can make improvements. Yeah. There's lots of stuff you can do with them. It's more of a. Whereas you can't do that with a business, right?
Well, why don't we buy shares in NZ and then wander around the building actually telling people how they do their job better?
Well,
that's making improvements, isn't it? Although there's a difference between ownership and management.
Well, that's true.
Yeah.
There's a guy who's actually already doing that. Canadian bloke.
When you buy into a business, a share, you're entrusting the management to make those improvements for you. And there's lots. I think the point is, with New Zealanders, we understand property. We're in it for the long term, and we look at it and we go, well, there it is. It's my house. Well, we could go and buy, you could go and buy shares in Auckland Airport. We'll go for a drive out to Mangere, and there it is. It's not going anywhere. That's a geographic airport.
Yeah.
And you've got a little hand in that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the fact is, if you're fully 100% in residential property and something happens, it is going to severely affect your net worth. Whereas if you're in a properly diversified managed portfolio, something happens to one of your holdings, it's only a small part of that holding, and it's not going to have the same effect.
And the older, the older you get, I think the more you realise this. We had a landlord who we used to think he was a genius. Well, I mean, he still is, but he had 10 properties all in the same suburb that we lived in, that we rented one of them from. And at the time I was like, man, this guy's loaded, and he probably has lots of different investments. But if you have them all in one place, it's not exactly a great thing.
Often too, as you get a little bit older and things happen, you have unexpected bills. If you have all your sort of, let's say your income stream is coming from your property rentals, and you need to raise money for something, even if it's for a luxury, like going on a trip in later years, you can't sell a quarter of the laundry. Whereas you can sell a little bit of your portfolio quickly.
Great advice as always, Mark. Good to see you. That is Forsyth Bar's Mark Richardson, investment advisor, with your personal finance update for today. 1 after 8, you're watching Herald Now. G'day, good morning, welcome to Herald Now. I'm Ryan Bridge. Wednesday the 18th of June. On the show this hour, if you've noticed your weekly shop getting more expensive, it's because it is. Grocery prices up over 4% year on year. We'll look at how hard that's biting Kiwis. Madison Malone takes us inside the lab where Amazon makes its AI chips. It's where the future is being made right now. And the laws of supply and demand in action. Actress Sydney Sweeney is selling her bathwater because people want to buy it. What's wrong with people? Honestly, Justin Bieber's having a meltdown too. Actually, I saw this yesterday, a bit like Britney, sadly. We'll have an update from Jenny Mortimer at the Herald later. Right now, bathwater Honestly, what's next? Toilet water? Where do you people get? Here's news.
Herald Now News, powered by Newstalk ZB.
Food inflation is up, rising 4.4% annually. Meat, poultry and fish had the biggest annual increases, while butter, milk and cheese drove grocery prices. Butter surged by more than 51% over the year. Independent economist Cameron Bagri told Ryan Bridge the numbers are creeping up, but the composition of the inflation matters more than the inflation itself.
So what we keep a pretty close eye on is what's called non-tradable inflation, which is domestic inflation. That's the piece that the Reserve Bank can control. It's elevated, but it's all been heading south, so we're taking a bit of comfort at that.
The coroner is calling for compulsory nationwide life jacket use following the death of a 10-year-old boy in the Manukau Harbour. Open Justice reports Ryder Ferrigill and his mother Gemma died in November 2022 after a boat carrying 5 people capsized near Clark's Beach. They both drowned after hours of clinging to the overturned hull and even after reaching the relative safety of a sandbar. Foodstuffs is confident staff from a fire-damaged Auckland supermarket will be well looked after. A large blaze at New World Victoria Park yesterday sent smoke billowing over the central city, taking about 10 hours to extinguish. Fire crews have been tending to hotspots overnight, with the building expected to be handed back today. Foodstuffs North Island CEO Chris Quinn says once they clarify the situation, they'll make a plan with each and every employee. South Island economies continue to stand tall. Canterbury, the West Coast, Otago and Marlborough have nabbed the top 4 spots on ASB's regional economic scoreboard, which rates regions based on year-on-year growth. Chief economist Nick Tuffley says the South Island's housing market is robust and employment has held up better than the North. He says areas like Otago have also had the benefit of strong tourism, while there's been a lot of good on-farm returns. More New Zealand businesses are directing their attention to growth. The 2 Degrees 2025 Shaping Business Study suggests 45% of business leaders are optimistic about the year ahead. It compares to 34% last year and 40% in 2021. But Chief Executive Mark Callender says there are still challenges.
We're still in a fairly recessionary-based economy. There's still inflation impacting businesses. There's lower household spending that's also impacting them. Against the backdrop of all of that, I think they can see line of sight to things improving.
A jam-packed agenda for the Prime Minister as his mission to boost our profile in China kicks off. Christopher Luxon's touchdown in Shanghai. Today will be all about championing New Zealand products to Chinese consumers at a number of events. Luxon's next stop is Beijing, where he will meet with President Xi Jinping.
Herald Now Sport, brought to you by Gold Sport.
Silver Fern's Vice-Captain Kate Heffernan is calling for flexibility in New Zealand's eligibility rules after revealing she's had conversations with Australian netball clubs. Arina Sabalenka has branded her comments as unprofessional after losing the French Open tennis final to Coco Gauff. She's apologised for attributing the result to mistakes rather than her opponent's performance. Queensland League coach Billy Slater has challenged former New South Wales prop Aaron Wood's claim he's a grub, ahead of tonight's second State of Origin match in Perth.
Every time I hear Neva say the word grub, it makes me giggle. I don't know why. Lots of feedback this morning. Ryan at nzherald.co.nz. What is the most expensive item at the supermarket? We've been talking, of course, about butter. We had food price inflation up yesterday over 4%. Colin says cat food. Colin hasn't said how much cat food costs. I don't have a cat, so I don't know. But can I recommend native birds? A lot cheaper. Ryan, please ask the government to provide dairy... Paul says, no, you cannot suggest that. I didn't. Please ask... Well, I did, but obviously it's not a good thing. Please ask the government to provide dairy products by having prisoners. This is from Angela in Whenua Kaiti. Angela, did you send us a photo yesterday of your beautiful vista from your house? Because I only say that because Whenua Kaiti must be quite a small place, and I see the name Angela. Anyway, Angela says, could we please get our prisoners to make dairy products, learning a trade while working a farm outside of the prison? That's a good idea. Would we want them roaming? Potentially not. And this one is from Quentin. who says, good morning, Quentin, nice to have you watching this morning. Question, is the background in real time or recorded? I see the same female reporter, Katie wave, proof it's real. That she is not an image. I see the same female reporter in the background, the same frames every morning. Cheers, Quentin. Quentin, yes. She moves in real time. Look. So yeah, no, that's all real. They are all real people. They're not particularly interesting, which is why we don't hear from them. But it is nice to have something happening in the background occasionally. Interesting also, Quentin has sent in his email via Pixt. Remember a Pixt? It says at pixt.1.nz. Quentin, what is with that? Very weird. Anyway, just gone 8 minutes after 8. I digress. We'll get to Madison Malone out of the States next. Here's weather.
Herald Now weather, brought to you by You Do It Kitchens.
Good morning. Another carbon copy day from yesterday. Fine, frosty and sometimes foggy. We do have a few frontal rain bands approaching. They'll hit the west tomorrow and then move north over southern and central New Zealand. This will see a slight increase in overnight temperatures tomorrow night, but for now, it's much the same for the lower south, with either a frosty or foggy morning. Mostly fine skies, though. Cloud does roll in tonight with a few showers. Fifth morning in a row, you've woken in the negatives. Christchurch, maybe some fog around too. It will be a mostly fine day here, but showers arrive out west and in the north this evening. Now, the usual suspects waking with fog and or frost. Once it clears, it's blue sky with cloud increasing tonight around the capital. There's 1 or 2 showers for Hawke's Bay early, taking a little longer to clear around Gisborne. Fog might return tonight for Rotorua, Tokoroa and for Taupō. And there could be pockets of fog around Auckland, but other than that, the upper north has another beautiful day. Fine, just a light south or southeasterly, with high cloud arriving tonight over Northland.
You're watching Herald Now. The email is ryan at nzherald.co.nz. Time is 9 after 8. In a laboratory on the outskirts of Austin, Texas, a team of engineers are designing Amazon's custom computer chips, including those used to train and fuel the latest artificial intelligence models. Host of Markets with Madison Malone, has recently paid it a visit. She continues her sojourn across the United States. Take a watch.
All right, come on in. We start that mindset from the silicon level all the way to the system in the data center.
I'm inside a computer chip lab in Austin, Texas. That's at the heart of Amazon Web Services' custom silicon strategy. This is where engineers are catching up to the most in-demand chip makers in the world, like NVIDIA, to meet scaling demand for AI compute power.
When DeepSeek came out, I think there was a lot of narrative around there. Does this mean that nobody's going to need these machines anymore? The reverse is actually true, which is just an increased demand. Given that models are going to get more efficient, I'm sure there are going to be many more innovations like we saw from DeepSeek, and the demand for compute is going to continue to increase. So that's where we expect things to be going.
An example of that is Stargate, or your internal example would be Project Rainier, 400,000 Trainium chips for Anthropic. What is AWS trying to prove through Project Rainier?
I don't know if we're trying to prove anything. I think we're literally trying to meet a customer's need.
But in terms of the scale, Trainium probably hasn't been tested at that ultra cluster scale yet.
I actually think that would be true of a few ultra clusters at the moment. Like the market is moving so fast, right?
These frontier models also have enormous demand, and increasingly so. Therefore, I can imagine that puts pressure on you and your team to not only deliver the best and most efficient and price performant chips, but also at speed. How do you navigate making the best chip quickly?
Right. There are 2 aspects of this. So,
and you can catch that full episode of Madison's program on YouTube. Maddie is with us from the States now. Maddie, good morning.
Good afternoon.
Are you ever going to come home?
I had to double check.
Are you ever going to come home? You're just going to keep wandering around having a great time?
You know what, I'm having a pretty good time, but I will be home soon. I think I'll be home in about 2.5 weeks, so I'll come and pester you.
Come and see us then. Hey, I'm looking forward to this episode because you're meeting, one of the problems with data centres is they suck up a lot of energy. So you've met a startup that plans to build small nuclear reactors to try and solve this problem all over the world. How do they do this? What is the story?
Yeah, that's such a good point. So I've really visited the entire AI stack here, right? From being in Austin, Texas, and seeing what Amazon is doing with the design and deployment of these custom silicon chips to power AI. Specifically, they're working with Anthropic, which if you use Claude or Sonnet models, these are the chips that are literally powering those AI models. And actually, before that, when I first flew into LA, I've just been harboring this episode for a couple of weeks, I went and visited the startup called Valor Atomics, and started by this incredible guy who was 26. He dreamed up this business when he was 16 years old. And they're, as you say, building these small modular reactors. So these are real nuclear fission, nuclear energy reactors. Fission being the splitting of atoms, which, yes, did result in the atomic bomb, but he wants to build this stuff back at scale to power things like data centers, to power these massive industrial use cases. To that point of how much power these data centers soak up, we've even heard from Sam Altman from OpenAI recently saying that their only limitation right now to all of the AI services and abundance that they can bring to economies and to society is purely limited by the amount of compute that they have. So Stargate, as I mentioned at the beginning of that Amazon episode, that is what OpenAI, Microsoft, SoftBank, and Oracle are building out in Abilene, Texas, spending hundreds of millions of US dollars on this project. So money is flowing to it in mega scale because this is a real thing. This is the real tangible AI boom that's happening in front of our eyes.
Yeah, and needs to be powered by something that, which is why the nuclear thing fascinates me. Is it more, I don't know, is it dangerous to have potentially have lots of little nuclear, power rather than one big one?
Well, apparently, according to Isaiah, it's safer. And I obviously pushed him on the point of safety and fear surrounding these things, which are, absolutely validated fears, after Nagasaki and Hiroshima. But he made an interesting point, was that with every single technological revolution we've had, the only way things get better and safer is by doing things more often. And by being able to build these things at a smaller scale means that they can build nuclear out more frequently, therefore, hopefully, do it better and safer.
Interesting stuff, Maddie. I'll be catching your episode. Thank you, as always. Great to see you. Enjoy New York. Madison Malone.
I will.
Markets with Madison. You can watch Markets with Madison on nzherald.co.nz or Markets with Madison, the YouTube channel. It is just gone 8:15. You're watching Herald Now. Next, we're in Christchurch to find out why it's the best place in the country to live, according to Claire Sherwood. Then our panel is in to talk us through the big stories of the day. Stay tuned.
Maximising productivity, what have you got?
Well, if we switch to 2 degrees, with Flex for Business, we can instantly manage data usage, employee mobile plans, and cost centre reporting, saving us time and money. Cool. I'll get onto that then. Mm-hmm.
In 1985, my grandfather set out to make the world a better tea. That's why we grow our own, unlike other tea companies. Then pick the best leaves by hand, not machine, and pack it right here in Sri Lanka. But it's not just the taste that makes our tea better. 15% of our profit goes to humanity and to the elephants. As my grandfather said,
do try it.
You Do It delivers high-quality New Zealand-made flat-pack DIY kitchen cabinetry. With flexible widths at your fingertips, it makes designing easy. All at an affordable price because you order online and cut out the middleman. You can even upgrade your dream kitchen with You Do It stylish and clever options, like choosing wall cabinets with overhanging doors, or select from a range of pull-out storage solutions. Add premium soft-close drawers and ask to stretch the height, width or depth of your cabinets. Upgrade your kitchen today and head to newsroom.co.nz.
Welcome back. You're watching Herald Now. You know, we showed you earlier, we'll come back to this in a second, but I showed you the clip of Trump and Starmer over at the G7 in Canada. Well, Starmer has issued probably one of the most weird press statements ever. We'll get to that in just a second. Right now, 17 after 8. As we know, the regional economic scoreboard from ASB is out. We had Nick Tuffley on this morning. South Island has come out on top in the top 4 positions. Number 1 was Canterbury. Claire Sherwood, News Talk ZB South Island News Director. I imagine here on a victory lap to gloat before us all this morning. Claire?
I require no convincing about how good Christchurch and Canterbury is. In fact, the South Island, Ryan, as you know. But I mean, all of these further reports that come out just keep solidifying what we all know and what you're all starting to learn and accept, that we are just strides ahead. We're doing really well in terms of, growth and infrastructure, and Christchurch very much feels like it's back post-quake, which has been a long time coming, but we're finally there. This latest report, though, the Regional Economic Scoreboard by ASB, this is measured on 8 different areas and I'll list them, and I do need my notes for this because 8's a lot to remember. So this is looking at things like population, employment, retail, trade, house prices, house sales, construction, consumer confidence, and also new car registrations. Canterbury this year has come out on top. Last year we were second. This year we've come out on top. Second is the West Coast, then Otago, and then Marlborough. So the South Island centres, I guess, in the top 4. By comparison, Auckland's in at number 10 and Wellington number 15. So ASB and economists say this is largely down to things like our exports, dairy, meat, horticulture, forestry, etc. But we're going to ride that wave as long as we can.
No, you certainly are, Claire, taking all the liberties this morning, from what I can see. Do you know that the Māori proverb, the kumara should not speak of its sweetness? Maybe a little dose of that this morning, Claire?
Not at all. No, not at all, Ryan.
Great to have you on the program. Oh, actually, before you go, very quickly an update on these council staff. We spoke about this a couple of weeks ago, who had to be evacuated from their council building and now won't be back in a hurry.
This is the Civic building on Hereford Street, Ryan. So a lot of people actually wrongly think that it's a post-quake build because it is relatively new. However, they'd moved into that building just before the quake. It has routine inspections by Ngāi Tahu, who own the property. As part of a routine inspection about a month ago, they found that the annex attached to the side was seismically compromised. So they evacuated 400 staff from the council building. They've been working at various different spots, libraries and service centres across the city. Unfortunately, the report's back and it does need some significant work. The Mayor says that designing and redesigning what needs to be designed is going to take a couple of months, and then building it or doing the strengthening work to get it up to code is going to be another probably 5 months. So it will be Christmas before Christchurch City Council is back home in the Civic building.
Not quite perfect, are we? Claire, thank you. Claire Sherwood, News Talk ZB South Island News Director. It's just gone 20 after 8 and you're watching Herald Now. Right, very quickly, this is the clip of Starmer and Trump at the G7 yesterday. Have a look.
We all know the great Prime Minister of the UK, and we just signed a document. This is, sorry about that. A very important document. A little windy out here. Give it that one. We just signed it, and it's done. And so we have our trade agreement with the European Union.
I was just talking earlier about how
it's a fair deal for both.
you should, Starmer bending down like that, just not a great look. And at a press conference, and we've got Deborah Peed on the panel in just a second, she will give you this advice for free as a PR expert. But Starmer has now issued a press statement about this incident because it's gone so viral. He has claimed that he acted quickly to pick up papers dropped by Donald Trump due to a tightly guarded security zone around the president. The Prime Minister suggested the outcome would not have been great for any helpful reporter who may have intervened to give Trump a hand. He said basically he stepped forward to pick up the papers so that no reporter stepped forward to pick up the papers in case they might have been shot. I mean, what? Just say you look like a fool bending over in front of the president and just be done with it. Who died and made you the president's security anyway? Keir Starmer of Armour Guard. It's very weird. 21 minutes after 8 o'clock. Let's get to our panel now. Joining us, as I said, is founder of Peed PR, Deborah Peed. Good morning.
Morena.
And also joining us is Newmarket Business Association's Mark Knopf-Thomas. Good morning to you.
Kia ora.
Good to have you here. Deborah, would you, if you're in a situation like that, if you ever find yourself in front of, like a deer in headlights, what do you tell people about body language?
Oh gosh, that's so important. I mean, the cameras, there's hundreds of cameras on them. Just be mindful of that. And surely they've all got minions to rush in and pick up those papers without the risk of being shot. So no, I think that statement, that's a top spin on a spin.
It's nonsense, isn't it? All right, let's talk about supermarket prices. So, Mark, we had food price inflation up yesterday more than 4% and butter and stuff like that. What's your take on it? Because on the one hand, it's expensive for us, but on the other, our farmers get the payout. It helps the economy, right?
Bit of a double-edged sword, I think. But I think, forget Bitcoin. You should be investing in cheese and butter because that's where you make the real money. I know that global price markets, they have an impact, and I know there's been sort of a lot of looking at that in terms of what the supermarkets are doing. But I've often wondered how global we really are, because is the playing field really that level in New Zealand in terms of what we're getting at the supermarket in terms of butter? So go overseas into Europe, the UK or France or anywhere else, and there's like a plethora of butter from all over the world. We don't see that here. We just see maybe a couple of things from overseas, but it's really a very New Zealand-dominated butter market, and maybe that's something to be looked at. I don't know.
Yeah, well, presumably that's because we produce so much of it ourselves. I mean, we export more than 90% of what we produce, which is why we pay an international price. But I guess if you're like a European butter brand, would you export to New Zealand? I don't know.
No, look, I agree, but I'm married to a farmer, so I have a slightly different take on it, and I'm happy that we're seeing our food producers valued more. But there's also, it's a two-way street. We also need to be savvier shoppers, and let's face it, there's a lot of things we can do smarter. I mean, we've been conditioned to only choosing those perfect pieces of fruit and veg. We buy fancy water in bottles when we've got delicious water coming out of our tap. So, we can be savvier shoppers as well. So let's not beat up the producer on this. And it's good that the farmer is getting a bit more slice of the coin.
Yeah. You thank God for farmers, really. They save New Zealand's bacon, no pun intended, time and time again.
Yeah, they're carrying us through it. Funny you mentioned things that we should be doing without, that we've kind of become accustomed to. Remember soap? And now we have body wash, and we have all these different things. And I was talking to my partner about this the other day, just saying, can we just get some soap? Just go back old school, so much cheaper.
Have you tried to find soap on the shelf?
Well, no, because
like
I don't go to the supermarket.
The bottom row, really
so the bottom, and then rows and rows of body wash, all packaged in plastic.
You have to bend over like Keir Starmer to pick it up. So,
which no one, as Deborah will advise.
Not a good look.
Maybe you can do it in the supermarket. That's okay. You can bend over for the soap, but not for Trump's papers. Right, we're going to talk about a whole bunch of other stuff, including Sydney Sweeney selling her bathwater or something weird like that. Anyway, our panel returns in just a few moments, just gone 25 minutes after 8.
Of course we can set up the new smart TV for you. We could also put it on the wall for you too.
Want to keep your family safe online? We've got tips for that.
Yeah, I can show you how to use the AI on your laptop.
Teaching the kids to do laundry? These washing machines auto-dispense the perfect amount of detergent, making it super easy to learn.
Wait, what's a Ninja Creamy?
Got tech questions? We've got answers. With 66 stores nationwide, your tech experts ready to help.
Sing your heart out to Coast's feel-good 80s hits. Kenny Loggins, Whitney, John Farnham, Eurythmics, Bonnie Tyler, Eric Carmen. The most 80s are on Coast. Sing your heart out. Coast.
After 20 seasons on the footy field, it's fair to say I know a thing or two about resilience, just like Kaiwaka wet weather gear. Digging deep when the going gets tough. Kaiwaka, designed to perform, made to outlast.
We have completed 4 builds with GJ. Every time we want to think of building, we always go back to GJ.
It's a really good experience throughout the whole process.
They deliver what they promise on, and it feels like working with a family member. It's very easy and trustworthy to work with GJ.
Welcome back. You're watching Herald Now, 27 after 8 o'clock. We're back with our panel right now. We have founder of PPR, Deborah Peed, and the Chief Executive, Newmarket Business Association, Mark Knopf-Thomas, both soap buyers, we learnt this morning, which is interesting. Now, bowel cancer. We had Die Henwood on the show earlier. A lot of men, obviously in particular, Mark, a lot of men aren't getting checked if they have signs or fatigue, or maybe they think they're too young. Di's advice this morning was basically go and get yourself checked out.
100%. I had one colonoscopy a few years ago myself, and actually they're really, really easy and something you should just get into. I actually have a very dodgy Nicola Willis story about that, but at an event I was at when I just had one done actually. But I won't go into that right now. But I think men, just do it. Just don't be stoic. Get over it, and do it, because it's so important and so easy to do.
Nicola Willis didn't perform.
No, it wasn't Nicola Willis doing it. No,
Yeah.
trust me.
All
But
right.
yeah, my team will be laughing at this because it was a funny moment.
Okay.
If I can just add to that, we have the Cancer Society has amazing resources and an 0800 number, and no one should suffer cancer alone. And so if anyone is suffering cancer, call that 0800 number, the Cancer Society. And you'll be amazed at the support and the value that they deliver.
I've often wondered why I mean, it's probably very expensive, but if there weren't mass sort of testing of people of all kinds of things, including having a mandatory MRI when you're 45, 55 and 65, just to sort of keep on top of some of these things so we can put in preventative measures as opposed to what we do now, which is actually trying to fix something which is already so far down the track in terms of medical conditions. But it comes down to money, I guess.
We're finishing this morning on Sydney Sweeney, who, if you don't know, is a famous actress, Hollywood actress. She's selling, because it's so popular, her own bathwater. Deborah, can you help me make sense of why? I can understand that there's some like weird people out there who might want to buy Sydney Sweeney's bathwater, but why she's selling it?
Yeah. Look, I mean, this sounds absolutely absurd. $1,500 for a bar of soap, and here we are in New Zealand agonising over the price of cheese. But this is classic PR gold. She's not selling hygiene, she's selling hype. She's selling headlines. And this is just what PR people do. We create these outrageous situations that market themselves. They become bigger than any ad spend. And she's done exactly that. She's tapped into the sentiment of limited editions, outrageous headlines, and outrageous concept. Good on her. She's not the first one to do it, though. Gwyneth Paltrow did it with the soap that smells like her vajayjay. So not the first. But certainly, this is what branding is like in the influencer economy.
Okay, so tell me, because this is a new show, and we obviously want to get the branding out there, get the word out there. What should I be selling?
Oh, Ryan, we should have a workshop and come up with something totally outrageous. But you've got lots to sell. I mean,
Sell your hair.
your hair, a sunny bill, and your face, and
yeah.
your skills.
What about an old bar of soap?
There you go. I just think the concept of rubbing somebody else's DNA over yourself in the shower is a bit gross.
Disgusting.
Yeah.
Well, it depends who that person is.
Is she selling something, though, other than this? You know, is this part of a wider, is she then going to put out a shampoo line or something?
Look, this is just genius marketing. Who knows if there's any extension to this. But it's got headlines, and here we are talking about it down in New Zealand.
So true.
Founder of PPR, Deborah Peed, and CEO of the Newmarket Business Association, Mark Knopf-Thomas. Good to have you guys on the program as always. 29 away from 9. You're watching Herald Now. Here's Neva.
Herald Now News, powered by News Talk ZB.
Food inflation is up, rising 4.4% annually. Meat, poultry and fish had the biggest annual increases, while butter, milk and cheese drove grocery prices. Butter surged by more than 51% over the year. Independent economist Cameron Bagri told Ryan Bridge the numbers are creeping up, but the composition of the inflation matters more than the inflation itself.
So what we keep a pretty close eye on is what's called non-tradable inflation, which is domestic inflation. That's the piece that the Reserve Bank can control. It's elevated, but it's all been heading south, so we're taking a bit of comfort at that.
The coroner is calling for compulsory nationwide life jacket use following the death of a 10-year-old boy in the Manukau Harbour. Open Justice reports Ryder Ferrigill and his mother Gemma died in November 2022 after a boat carrying 5 people capsized near Clark's Beach. They both drowned after hours of clinging to the overturned hull and even after reaching the relative safety of a sandbar. Foodstuffs is confident staff from a fire-damaged Auckland supermarket will be well looked after. A large blaze at New World Victoria Park yesterday sent smoke billowing over the central city, taking about 10 hours to extinguish. Fire crews have been tending to hotspots overnight, with the building expected to be handed back today. Foodstuffs North Island CEO Chris Quinn says once they clarify the situation, they'll make a plan with each and every employee. South Island economies continue to stand tall. Canterbury, the West Coast, Otago and Marlborough have nabbed the top 4 spots on ASB's Regional Economic Scoreboard, which rates regions based on year-on-year growth. Chief Economist Nick Tuffley says the South Island's housing market is robust and employment has held up better than the North. He says areas like Otago have also had the benefit of strong tourism, while there's been a lot of good on-farm returns. More New Zealand businesses are directing their attention to growth. The 2 Degrees 2025 Shaping Business Study suggests 45% of business leaders are optimistic about the year ahead. It compares to 34% last year and 40% in 2021. But Chief Executive Mark Callender says there are still challenges.
We're still in a fairly recessionary-based economy. There's still inflation impacting businesses. There's lower household spending that's also impacting them. Against the backdrop of all of that, I think they can see line of sight to things improving.
A jam-packed agenda for the Prime Minister as his mission to boost our profile in China kicks off. Christopher Luxon's touchdown in Shanghai. Today will be all about championing New Zealand products to Chinese consumers at a number of events. Luxon's next stop is Beijing, where he will meet with President Xi Jinping.
Herald Now Sport, brought to you by Gold Sport.
Silverfern's vice-captain Kate Heffernan is calling for flexibility in New Zealand's eligibility rules after revealing she's had conversations with Australian netball clubs. Arina Sabalenka has branded her comments as unprofessional after losing the French Open tennis final to Coco Gauff. She's apologised for attributing the result to mistakes rather than her opponent's performance. Queensland League coach Billy Slater has challenged former New South Wales prop Aaron Wood's claim he's a grub, ahead of tonight's second State of Origin match in Perth.
You're watching Herald Now. Great to have your company, just gone 25 minutes away from 9 o'clock. We'll speak to Anne Gibson, the Herald's property editor, in just a few seconds about the New World. Anne is also being down in Rolston and Christchurch looking at the biggest shop in the South Island, period. We'll tell you what it is in a second. Some feedback, first of all. Ryan, love Trump, always a good laugh. Have a great day, team. And yes, because Quentin emailed in saying, are the people behind you real? And I showed you when I asked Katie to wave, so she's laughing, that they are real. And Lorraine says, have a great day, team. Yes, you are real. Looks like a real news team. Don't change anything. They are a real news team. I don't know whether that was meant to sound patronising, Lorraine, but Ryan, I love soap and I'm not a big believer in cats. Just love hanging out with you in the morning. That's lovely, Lisa Jane. Thank you for that. Ryan, I shop at Pack and Save. A great subject for the email from Trevor, meat price heart attack. Hi Ryan, I shop at Pack and Save. I was taken aback when the budget mince price was $20 a kilo, the same price as many better meat cuts. It has almost come to the point where becoming vegan is the only choice on a budget. Trevor, don't do it. And Robert says, great show. I won't read the next bit. Rob, my greatest expense at the supermarket is wine. Essential products like eggs are horrendously expensive. Yeah, as I say, the best thing to do if you are worried about the price of groceries is don't shop. That's my approach, and get your partner to do it all for you. Then you just sort of ignorantly bliss. Ignorance is bliss. 24 minutes, 23 away from 9. Here's weather.
Herald Now weather, brought to you by You Do It Kitchens.
Good morning. Another carbon copy day from yesterday. Fine, frosty and sometimes foggy. We do have a few frontal rain bands approaching. They'll hit the west tomorrow and then move north over southern and central New Zealand. This will see a slight increase in overnight temperatures tomorrow night, but for now, it's much the same for the lower south, with either a frosty or foggy morning. Mostly fine skies, though. Cloud does roll in tonight with a few showers. Fifth morning in a row you've woken in the negatives. Christchurch, maybe some fog around too. It will be a mostly fine day here, but showers arrive out west and in the north this evening. Now, the usual suspects waking with fog and or frost. Once it clears, it's blue sky with cloud increasing tonight around the capital. There's one or two showers for Hawke's Bay early, taking a little longer to clear around Gisborne. Fog might return tonight for Rotorua, Tokoroa and for Taupō. And there could be pockets of fog around Auckland, but other than that, the upper north has another beautiful day. Fine, just a light south or southeasterly, with high cloud arriving tonight over Northland.
The fire that ripped through the Auckland supermarket of New World Victoria Park finally has been extinguished. Took them 10 hours to get it all out. Firefighters have remained on the scene, dampening down the hot spots this morning. This New World was the most profitable in the country. So what now for the owners? Anne Gibson, the property editor at the Herald, is with us at the desk. Anne, good morning. First of all, what were they doing? Obviously some sort of renos happening there. What were they doing?
New World Victoria Park was getting three aspects from what we can tell: a modernisation, a reclad, because the building had been built around about the late 90s. I think 99 was when it opened. And the third thing it was getting was a big online delivery aspect. So this is chilled, ambient and frozen goods storage. They're picked from the supermarket floor to the baskets, and then they go up to that storage area. That was being developed by Savory Construction, as I understand it. But Savory haven't described the scope of work yet, and neither has Chris Quinn. So we're not entirely certain what was being built, but the experts that I've talked to in the sector say that was what was occurring, and that the fire occurred in the mezzanine area, and that's where that big online distribution area was being developed. There was also a lot of work going on in front of that big curtain glass wall that fronts the street, and that would have been part of the reclad. So a colleague here told me about visiting in the last week, and he said there were a lot of jackhammers and a big walled off area right behind the checkouts.
That would marry up with what Chris Quinn told us this morning. He said that it happened, the fire started, at least they think, in the mezzanine area, which is where construction was taking place.
That would make sense.
So Chris Quinn also told us that the building now gets handed over to them from fire and emergency. What happens next?
So I think next the insurers go in. The insurers, what they do is they call for reports. Now what they'll be looking at is it feasible to repair that building with the fire and the water damage, with all the electrical services, the mechanical services, the effect that the water would have had on the building, 10 hours of pumping that much water in. So is it a demolition or is it a rebuild? Now, engineers will be looking at the structure and whether there has been significant damage to the structure, whether it does require to be rebuilt. It's actually a relatively complicated building in that it has a suspended floor above the car park. So from an engineering point of view, there's a lot of loading on that. There's also trucks that come in off Franklin Road.
That's right.
That load onto part of the suspended floor. So there's a lot of engineering that has gone into that building. Now, the insurers will be getting the engineers in to say, can we fix it? Or, what does it cost to fix? What does it cost to rebuild? Now, to demolish alone would be $1 to $2 million, and it's quite a difficult site to get material out of. Also, when you look at rebuilding, there's one big aspect that people are talking about in the sector a lot at the moment. Does Foodstuffs, which owns the store, put apartments on top? Do they demolish the whole thing, put down a new floor slab strong enough to take high-rise apartments? It would be zoned for that, right?
Why wouldn't you?
Why wouldn't you? Because You look overseas, what have you got above supermarkets?
For houses. This all sounds like it could take a very long time. We could be without a supermarket in that site for years.
Could be. I mean, it will be a lot of investigation to begin with the engineers going in for the insurers to look at what the options are. Then it will be quite a difficult job to demolish, getting it out of a very tight site. And then, if it is a rebuild, what does it sort of take to repair? If it is a new build, you've got to go through design and consenting and resource management and all the residents of Franklin Road, the delights.
Oh, they're such friendly people. Well, they are actually, because they let people on their street, but they do like to complain a little bit too, don't they? Anyway, this is a devastating fire particularly for the staff and the owners there. Now, very quickly before you go, Anne, a couple of quick things. You've been in Rolston looking at the biggest shop, and it was almost like a quiz question. What is the biggest shop in the South Island?
Pack and Save Rolston. Under construction at the moment, due to open in the next few months. This is an 8,100 square metre store. It's right on the outskirts of Rolston, beside what was horse equestrian areas. Rolston is a fast-growing southern suburb in Christchurch. They're going to get 35,000 people a week in there, average spend over $100 per basket. We also can see there the size and the scale of that vast store, nothing like it in the South Island. So when they build the packs these days, they build them really big. And by the way, it's got a 370,000 litre storage tank for water over there on the hard right. See that circular silver thing? That's for firefighting. And by the way,
clever
also
idea.
Highland Park Pack and Save had a lot of problems firefighting water storage there. There was a big row between Watercare and Foodstuffs North Island.
So is that part of the consent now? You have to have your own water, basically?
Yes, there's not enough water within the system to put out a fire of a supermarket that large. And remember too, we found out last night that the people in the area of the New World Victoria Park had lower water pressure because there was such a strain on the system with fire and emergency tapping in.
Is there anything you don't know, Anne? That's the only question I have left. Actually, very quickly, and you can only have 2 words to get this out, but somebody was emailing in their most expensive item at the grocery store was cat food, and you said?
Go to Costco to buy your cat food because it can be 50% cheaper than a supermarket. We have done, my husband and I, who shops with me, the calculation on the price per item, and you know, Costco Westgate, pretty unbeatable.
There we go. Not quite 2 words, Anne, but you did have all the information. Anne Gibson, property editor at the Herald, with us this morning. 16 minutes away from 9. Now, Donald Trump has tweeted this morning. We spoke to Winston Peters on the program earlier. Donald Trump has tweeted to the Ayatollahs in Iran, to the supreme leader of Iran, I'm not going to, in brackets, kill you for now. He's threatening, right? However, he has a problem. He has a MAGA problem. And Tucker Carlson is part of that MAGA movement, used to be at Fox News, now has a YouTube internet show. These guys don't want Trump getting bogged down in another war in the Middle East. Have a listen.
I am saying this because I'm really afraid that my country's going to be further weakened by this. I think we're going to see the end of American empire.
Trump knows this. Trump knows it's a political problem for him, so he's been batting it away. Take a look.
What was the response to Tucker Carlson criticizing you, saying that you were complicit in the war?
I don't know what Tucker Carlson is saying. Let him go get a television network and say it so that people listen.
And quickly, have you spoken to Zelensky before your bylaw?
So the question is Donald Trump is this just bluster from Donald Trump, like he did with the tariffs, you know, oh, I'm going to kill you, I'm going to bomb here, and actually he doesn't mean any of it, and he's just trying to negotiate the best deal possible to get the nuclear enrichment program out of Iran or drastically reduce what they are doing? Or is he actually going to potentially get America's Air Force involved in strikes, drones involved in strikes on Iran? We just don't know, and I suppose that's the point of Trump, is he doesn't want anyone to know what he's doing. 14 minutes away from 9 o'clock now. Actress Sydney Sweeney's bathwater, as we mentioned in the panel earlier, has just been sold for $1,500. It's literally soap infused with her actual bathwater. Why? Because apparently people wouldn't stop asking for it. Jenny Mortimer is the New Zealand Herald's chief entertainment reporter and is with us this morning. Hi, Jenny.
Hi.
Who are these people?
Oh, look, she has a lot of crazed fans who are more obsessed with her body than her body of work. Yeah, apparently they kept asking for it. But what's confusing about this is there's not actually much in it for her. They were originally sold for $8 a bar. She did a collab with a soap company and only 5,000 were released. So that's $40,000. And I'm assuming she would have probably got like 20 of that. She's done a photo shoot for it. So apart from reminding people what she looks like naked, I'm not quite sure what's in it for Sydney Sweeney.
Well, was that, because we had Deborah Pete on, who's from PPR earlier. She said, look, it's just buzz.
Correct.
Around an actress. I mean, maybe there's a role coming up and they think, oh, look, there's Sydney Sweeney. Oh, she's hot. We'll put her in there.
Yeah, completely. And Sydney Sweeney right now is in between things that are coming out. So it's probably just a reminder of I'm still here. I'm still relevant. Don't pay attention to that one because, look, I've got my own soap with my bathwater.
That's weird. And it's called Dr. Squatch.
Well, that's who she collabed with. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, nothing to do with
that would be a
her.
terrible name.
Yeah, given some of the pictures, I thought so too. Hey, Justin Bieber, this is actually quite sad. So I saw this video yesterday. I don't know if we've got the video or not, but, oh, we do. All right, let's have a look at Justin Bieber. It's a bit of a hard watch. I sort of feel bad that we even play it, but it's out there. Anyway, have a look.
Doesn't matter. How do you think it's going with you in my face? Get out of my face. You are not on the sidewalk. Get on the sidewalk. No, stop that. You don't get to talk to me today. No. You don't get to disrespect me and get away with it. No, not tonight, sir.
Jenny, it's hard to watch because this actually reminds me of, remember when Britney Spears had her moment?
Yeah, and that's exactly what it feels like. It feels like we're seeing somebody who, of course, as we know, child stars later in life, that's a lot to process, to go through, and we are now seeing very similar, it feels, to what happened to Britney, where we're watching him go through trauma and go through a real breakdown. And it's also incredibly sad because he's got a 9-month-old baby, he's got a wife, and you kind of think, what are they going through at home? What is he going through? Does he have the help around him? Because we've seen from the text message feud he had with a friend recently that it seems like he is anyone who calls him out on his behaviour and especially his anger right now, which he said he has a lot of problems with, he's cutting them from his life. So it's really sad, and he has a huge fan base. Like, he's got some absolute bangers still. So you really hope he's going to have the right people around him to help him through this.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, good to see you, Jenny.
You too.
See you next week. Ryan at nzherald.co.nz is the email address if you got feedback this morning. That was Jenny Mortimer, Herald Chief Entertainment Reporter. Coming up next, Chelsea Daniels, host of the Front Page podcast, is with us today. She's talking funding for early childhood education, but also the regulations. David Seymour wants to dismantle regulations for your kids when they go to early childhood. This individual that Chelsea is going to tell us about wants more. That's next.
Are you considering a DIY kitchen, but just not sure if you can do it? Well, it's not as hard as you think. With You Do It DIY Kitchens, you're in safe hands. And the customer support team really know their stuff. After all, they design and manufacture everything here in New Zealand. You do it, and you save money. So choose You Do It, the affordable DIY Kiwi kitchen with a great reputation. Visit newsroom.co.nz.
I'm Hayden Scott and I'm a knife maker. I make knives from my workshop at home in West Auckland. Yeah, my previous life I was a chef, did that for 25 years, but I had this knife making thing that I was doing and had been doing for some time, and so that transition from finishing that 25-year career and taking the plunge into full-time knife maker, I had been building up to that, but I still had to take a leap.
Ah, here she is. How's the business going?
Good, actually. We just switched to 2 degrees. Well, we tested the networks and couldn't see any difference, but 2 degrees has the most satisfied customers. With Flex, we get instant control of phone plans, data usage, and cost center reporting. And they're the fastest growing business network.
Can I have what she's having?
Welcome back to Herald Now. It is 8 minutes away from 9 o'clock. There are stark warnings that regulation in New Zealand's early childhood education centres is lacking. And it's already led to some complications with young people who've been attending. Chelsea Daniels is host of the Front Page podcast and with me this morning. Chelsea, good morning. How are we?
That's a nice sized mug, actually.
Thank you. Thank you. We got these new mugs. Very nice mugs indeed. Mug and
size.
a mug. They are a really good size. And not that I'm selling them because we're not selling the mugs,
No.
but they are a good cup of coffee in there, and then also a lot of room for the fingers.
Oh,
So a lot of
large
space.
hands.
Exactly.
Large
Chelsea, you've got
gloves.
me to a T.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about early childhood education, because David Seymour wants to basically dismantle regulations with ECE, right? And you've been speaking to some people who kind of want the opposite?
Yeah, so I spoke to Dr. Sarah Alexander. She's the Chief Advisor to the Office of Early Childhood Education, and that's a national body for the sector, and they're a lead public advisor as well. So we talked through a couple of cases recently that have made their way through the coroner's court, which are actually quite harrowing. One of them was the death of a baby who was put down to sleep in a room with 8 other babies without constant adult supervision. Another one was a toddler who suffered a fatal but invisible head injury. So they'd fallen, they'd been found at the bottom of an adult-sized chair and died later on. So there are currently no regulations for what kind of furniture you should be using in your early childhood centre. There's no primary caregiver, so someone who looks after one child at a time. Currently there can be different changeovers, which is actually quite scary, and there's not one person responsible for them. So Sarah wants there to be a requirement, especially for under 2-year-olds, to have that primary person responsible for each child, because then you get a sense of differences in their behaviour during the day. So if they do fall down and knock their head or something, it's easier for that one person to be like, oh, there's something a bit wrong. Also, leaving 9 sleeping babies in a room and checking on them only every 10 minutes is normal. I would have thought you'd need someone in there watching them sleep constantly.
As you would assume, constant supervision.
You would assume so. And I said to Sarah, I don't have children, nor do I plan on having any. But what she was telling me was actually quite frightening. And I was like, is there anything to quell the fears of parents, especially with the regulations and the changes that are coming through? And she said, no. It's getting
that's reassuring.
Not reassuring at all. It's already loose, she said. In terms of the number of qualified staff required in an ECE, primary school teachers can get these gigs. So they don't work with
because the
babies.
qualification thing. But I guess the thing is, you can have all of the regulations in the world, but not have someone with common sense running a centre. You know what I mean? Like, there is an element of that.
That's what I said to her as well.
Yeah.
All of these things seem like common sense. But no dice.
You've got to go and find out who's running your centre and make sure you can trust them.
And have a good look around as well. Look at the furniture. See what furniture, like she said that a kid's feet should always kind of be near or close to the floor when they're sitting in a chair, for example. So look at those kind of things, not just interacting with the people who are going to take care of your kid, but look at the environment as well, which is really important.
Everything has to match the size of the person, hence the massive mug. Thanks, Chelsea. Chelsea Daniels from the Front Page podcast. It is time to check in with business, thanks to our partners 2 Degrees Now. Has our economy hit a brick wall, or is it about to bounce out of the rough? Earlier, I spoke to Garth Bray from Business Desk. We spoke about the food price inflation data that came out yesterday. We've spoken about that this morning. Banks are saying, including BNZ and this morning ASB, this could push inflation outside of the Reserve Bank's band. And Garth was on the show a little earlier.
yeah, and that brick wall we're talking about could be a brick wall of frozen butter. If you look at the food prices that came out yesterday, I think we're talking like 51.2% increase in the price of butter over 12 months, 4.4% in, uplift in inflation. All of that is probably, if you're sitting there trying to think as a Reserve Bank board, what are we going to do? Crikey, it's looking a bit hot at the end of the year, and is the kind of stimulus that an inflation, that a rate cut in July would deliver, is that going to come later and just make the problem worse? Are we giving the medicine to the patient at the point where they're starting to recover, and this could actually help cook the recovery? This is the kind of calculus that seems to be suggesting to a lot of these bank economists that maybe they're not going to cut.
So they'll just hold. I mean, that's what Nick Tuffley said this morning. They'll basically just hold.
Yeah.
Speaking of butter, another couple of bidders out of the box for Fonterra's mainland group.
Yeah, this is the big deal. It's still sort of bubbling away. Probably got another 4 or 5 months before we actually hear how it lands. But Bega cheese, which Fonterra has the rights to distribute in Australia, has been banging on the door for ages saying we want to be let in, we want to be able to bid on this thing. They're actually in a wee bit of a court dispute over the right to continue distributing those products for Bega if they on-sell the whole thing. I know it's confusing, isn't it? And then you've got Bega saying, well, we'll go to the Commerce Commission equivalent, the ACCC, and we'll say we want a bit of a declaration about how this would affect competition. So it shows they're quite serious, actually, about bidding for the assets. However, they're kind of more keen on bidding for what's in Australia. They're saying not so sure about some of the Asian assets. And then the Australian newspaper, unnamed sources, was claiming that there's a Japanese bidder, Meiji Holdings, that's on the Nikkei, that's looking at taking a bite at this too.
But they haven't yet decided, Fonterra, whether they're going to do an IPO or whether it's going to be a trade sale, have they?
Haven't said.
But we think that they'll do a trade sale.
Well, the folks at Business Desk seem to think that it's looking more like a trade sale. That's where a lot of the talk is. There's certainly a lot of interest in a trade sale.
Is this Riley Kennedy? No, because no one knows more about it than.
Well, he was having a word with Peter McBride, the Fonterra chair, at Field Days and since, and I think they're pretty confident about where it's all going. So
he knows
more on the site.
He knows his stuff. Yeah. Hey, the national ticketing system. This is for buses and public transport.
Yeah.
So NZTA has a contract to run this. What's going on here?
Right. So this popped up in Scrutiny Week this week. Popped up yesterday. Chris Bishop is worried and unhappy, probably not
like just generally in life, or about this specifically?
With this specifically, which is probably not good news if you're at NZTA and you've signed a contract of about $470 million to US defence contractor to build a system that supposedly means you can use kind of like a hop card or a snapper card or whatever anywhere in the country, any bit of public transport you'll be able to use debit cards on. Sounds great.
$500 million?
Well, that's the initial contract. I think the budget out for sort of 10, 15 years is more like $1.5 billion. This is crazy stuff, right? But the benefits are yet to come. It was meant to roll out in Canterbury and Christchurch last year. It hasn't come yet. There's a governance group that's working on it, and Chris Bishop was saying, well, he's expecting a report from them by the end of July, and he wants a lot of action on that.
Well, you'd hope so for $472 million, wouldn't you? That's just another reason not to get the bus, in my mind.
Or to grab it because it costs that much. You might as well, Ryan.
True. Do you know actually who gets the bus is our next guest, or one of our next guests, Mark Richardson, who's sitting over there.
Good man.
He gets the bus. He's the last person I would have imagined would get on a bus, but he told me last time we were chatting that he gets the bus into work every day.
Whereas you could probably picture me on a push bike easily.
Well, you do. I know that you bike, because you come in sweating. I can smell you before I see you.
But saving so much money along the way.
That was Garth Bray, and of course we had Mark Richardson in from Forsyth Bar earlier in the show as well. Garth from Business Desk, thanks to our partners 2 Degrees. Let's check in on the news ahead for today with Katie Oliver, Herald NOW reporter. Katie, good morning.
Good morning.
So Health New Zealand currently sorting contracts with GPs, and we could see an uplift in that funding.
Yeah, so they're undergoing negotiations right now as we speak, and they could be drawing to a close. So what they're seeking is a uplift of funding by 6.4%, and that could see prices relax if they get that across the line, and GPs, as you said, are quietly confident that that may happen. Now, earlier this year there was a $285 million increase to GPs over 3 years, but it wasn't clear if that would translate to lower prices for New Zealanders yet. So these negotiations are pretty important, and hopefully we might see those prices reduce a little bit.
Okay, well that would be nice, wouldn't it, for people out there? We are a minute late to news, Katie, so we might have to skip your next story. But your birthday this weekend.
Oh gosh, don't tell me about it.
Katie's having an existential crisis.
I'm
about
going to
the
have a
fact
quarter-life crisis.
She's turning 25. I said, get a grip, honestly. But happy birthday for this weekend.
Oh, thanks, Ryan.
You doing
Appreciate
anything
it.
special?
I'm going to Tauranga, and then I'm going to come back to Auckland, and I'm going to do a double hitter, so yeah.
Good on you. Enjoy it. Enjoy it while it lasts, because once you turn 25, it's all over.
Life's over, yeah.
Right, it is 1 after 9. You're watching Herald Now. Here's Neva.
Herald Now News, powered by News Talk ZB.
Food inflation is up, rising 4.4% annually. Meat, poultry and fish had the biggest annual increases, while butter, milk and cheese drove grocery prices. Butter surged by more than 51% over the year. Independent economist Cameron Bagri told Ryan Bridge the numbers are creeping up, but the composition of the inflation matters more than the inflation itself.
So what we keep a pretty close eye on is what's called non-tradable inflation, which is domestic inflation. That's the piece that the Reserve Bank can control. It's elevated, but it's all been heading south, so we're taking a bit of comfort at that.
The coroner is calling for compulsory nationwide life jacket use following the death of a 10-year-old boy in the Manukau Harbour. Open Justice reports Ryder Ferrigill and his mother Gemma died in November 2022 after a boat carrying 5 people capsized near Clark's Beach. They both drowned after hours of clinging to the overturned hull and even after reaching the relative safety of a sandbar. Foodstuffs is confident staff from a fire-damaged Auckland supermarket will be well looked after. A large blaze at New World Victoria Park yesterday sent smoke billowing over the central city, taking about 10 hours to extinguish. Fire crews have been tending to hotspots overnight, with the building expected to be handed back today. Foodstuffs North Island CEO Chris Quinn says once they clarify the situation, they'll make a plan with each and every employee. South Island economies continue to stand tall. Canterbury, the West Coast, Otago and Marlborough have nabbed the top 4 spots on ASB's regional economic scoreboard, which rates regions based on year-on-year growth. Chief economist Nick Tuffley says the South Island's housing market is robust and employment has held up better than the North. He says areas like Otago have also had the benefit of strong tourism, while there's been a lot of good on-farm returns. More New Zealand businesses are directing their attention to growth. The 2 Degrees 2025 Shaping Business Study suggests 45% of business leaders are optimistic about the year ahead. It compares to 34% last year and 40% in 2021. But Chief Executive Mark Callender says there are still challenges.
We're still in a fairly recessionary-based economy. There's still inflation impacting businesses. There's lower household spending that's also impacting them. Against the backdrop of all of that, I think they can see line of sight to things improving.
A jam-packed agenda for the Prime Minister as his mission to boost our profile in China kicks off. Christopher Luxon's touchdown in Shanghai. Today will be all about championing New Zealand products to Chinese consumers at a number of events. Luxon's next stop is Beijing, where he will meet with President Xi Jinping.
Herald Now Sport, brought to you by Gold Sport.
Silver Fern's Vice-Captain Kate Heffernan is calling for flexibility in New Zealand's eligibility rules after revealing she's had conversations with Australian netball clubs. Arina Sabalenka has branded her comments as unprofessional after losing the French Open tennis final to Coco Gauff. She's apologised for attributing the result to mistakes rather than her opponent's performance. Queensland League coach Billy Slater has challenged former New South Wales prop Aaron Wood's claim he's a grub, ahead of tonight's second State of Origin match in Perth.
Herald Now Weather, brought to you by You Do It Kitchens.
Good morning. Another carbon copy day from yesterday. Fine, frosty and sometimes foggy. We do have a few frontal rain bands approaching. They'll hit the west tomorrow and then move north over southern and central New Zealand. This will see a slight increase in overnight temperatures tomorrow night, but for now, it's much the same for the lower south, with either a frosty or foggy morning. Mostly fine skies, though. Cloud does roll in tonight with a few showers. 5th morning in a row you've woken in the negatives. Christchurch, maybe some fog around too. It will be a mostly fine day here, but showers arrive out west and in the north this evening. Now, the usual suspects waking with fog and or frost. Once it clears, it's blue sky with cloud increasing tonight around the capital. There's 1 or 2 showers for Hawke's Bay early, taking a little longer to clear around Gisborne. Fog might return tonight for Rotorua, Tokoroa and for Taupo. And there could be pockets of fog around Auckland, but other than that, the upper north has another beautiful day. Fine, just a light south or southeasterly, with high cloud arriving tonight over Northland.
Thanks, Heather. And that is it for us for today. We'll be back tomorrow from 7 in the morning. For more news, don't forget you can visit nzherald.co.nz. Quick thank you to our partners, Forsyth Bar, You Do It, Barker's, 2 Degrees, GJ Gardner, Noel Leeming, and newly, welcome to the show, Dilma. Great to have you from the team at Herald Now. Every time I hold that up, I admit. From the team at Herald Now, thanks so much for watching, everyone. Thanks for all of your feedback and emails today as well. Really appreciate it. We'll see you tomorrow for our final show of the week. Ka kite.